You ever read a book or even somebody else's work that's in progress, or maybe even your own, and you're like, wow, these characters are pretty cool. There's a lot going on. And I also kind of don't care that whatever it is that's going on, it's like, but why? Like, why are these characters choosing to do these things? Well, if you've run into that, you've run into a stakes versus plot problem. Back in my ivory tower days, I had a workshop component in my creative writing classes where my students would basically give feedback to their peers on their work in progress. And it was usually short stories and novel chapters, whatever they were working on. And instinctually, a lot of my students knew that something was off, but they didn't quite have the language for that yet. They would say things like, well, I really want to be more invested in this story, but I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why this character is making the choices that they're making. Or things like, and you know what I'm talking about. When you get to the story, you're just kind of like, so what? Like, who cares of like what's happening here? Like, sure, it's beautiful, it's fast paced, it's interesting, but I don't know why we're even doing this, right? And that can be like really frustrating. And it's also hard to hear that as a writer. Like, how do I say to another writer, yeah, I like all this stuff, but I kind of don't give a shit about it. Like, that's kind of the worst feedback you can give. So let's talk about stakes versus plot. And by starting off with the devil we know, which is plot. Plot is the external pressure, or also known as the things that happen, the choices the character makes, the decisions that come down the pipeline, the actions that they take, right? So we can watch a character move through a story, and sometimes we just see plot point after plot point after plot point, and we don't necessarily see any development, or we don't see anything, and we're kind of like, well, why do they keep making these choices? Like, we don't know. It's just all action, action, action. Now, as a plot-driven writer, I'm going to tell you this, like, with all sincerity. If plot is not holding hands with the stakes, it is worthless, because you're just watching a series of events unfold. And while, again, they could be really fascinating experiences, they could be beautifully written and exquisitely rendered, but if there's no underlying stakes or meaning behind it, okay, why are we bothering? Which leads us to the stakes. Stakes are the internal pressure points, and they are also the costs associated with an outcome or associated with the actions. These are the things that your character stands to lose, and they are the engine that drives the why are they doing this? Without that, again, all we get is just a series of actions. These are also the sacrifices that the character has got to make in order to succeed. These are the traps and the pitfalls that they have to avoid in order to get to that happily ever after, or get to a conclusion that's satisfying enough in a character arc where we're like, oh wow, they really went somewhere. Yes, we've put them through their paces, right, in the plotting, but now we know why. Now we've seen them on the other side as a completely different character. So what I want you to imagine for a minute is Bridgerton, right? If you watch Bridgerton, or any like Regency period romance, even Pride and Prejudice is another good example of this. And it doesn't matter what season that we're talking about, but I want you to think about our Bridgerton sibling or Bridgerton child enters the marriage mart, right? There are seemingly insurmountable obstacles there for them to make the happily ever after match. And it almost always comes down to a threat of being ruined, right? There's always this loss of reputation is a big one, like being ruined. They could get married to somebody who really might look good on paper, but they have no money, right? Or there's a class difference that they have to overcome. And are they going to be able to, if they choose this person of a lower class, then they're going to have to be exiled from the family, right? Because of polite society, which is not at all freaking polite if you're going to exile your kid over who they love, right? So there's all of these things that we have to kind of get over. So that's what kind of brings about the tension in the plot. That's what brings about that same question of like, will they, won't they, can they, can't they, right? When we're watching any story unfold, is what would happen if they make this particular choice or they don't make this particular choice. And that's where the stakes can really drive that plot forward, and that plot can then again push back on the stakes. You can start to introduce concepts into the story, right? So in season 1 of Bridgerton, if we want to just get real specific, what ended up happening there is Daphne is on the marriage mart, and then we insert Nigel Burbrook, who was just a bumbling fool. They're both on the dark walk. oh my God, like her reputation could have been completely ruined. Her stupid brother Antony is like promising her to this bumbling idiot, right? Like these kind of things, right? There's all sorts of interplay happening with these other characters. But what I'm saying is the stakes are this loveless match. We don't want a loveless match, right? We want to marry for love. We want all of this, you know, romance and happily ever after. But we also can't be ruined, and you know, we have to make sure that we are financially secure in this whole thing. Like all of these components have to like add up in order for our plot to succeed or fail spectacularly. So without stakes in our plot, it's also going to lead us to ask the same questions, right? Even if we were watching Bridgerton and we'd be like, wow, it's a beautiful wedding. I mean, soundtrack is banging, like the set is off the chain, the costumes are gorgeous. We love this world, and right, it wouldn't have the viewership it has. We wouldn't be so hooked on it as we are. It wouldn't have been this phenomenon that it has been with every subsequent season. Now, how high of stakes you want to make is entirely up to you. But there are 11 different stakes that work. If you head on over to Substack, I have got the breakdown here of plot versus stakes. We're also going to be leading a workshop on those 11 stakes that always work, and it might be able to help infuse your writing with a little more tension, a little more why, and a lot more excitement around your plot. I hope that was helpful. I'll catch you next time.